Hello, and welcome to Tapping into Transit. We talk all the time about public transit, but behind all of this work. Who is true? My name is Bianca Miles. I am the TRU intern and social work master student, a Detroit native, and a longtime bus rider. I am joined today by Megan Owens, Executive Director of Transportation Race United, to explain the organization behind the Support Detroit Transit Facebook page, the Detroit Transit web, Twitter feed, and more. Before we begin, Megan, can you share more about this video series?
Sure. Well, one of TRU's missions and priorities is to educate people about what's happening around public transit and to make it easy to understand important transit issues. So we created this new Tapping into Transit video series of short dialogues between a couple of transit folks explaining important things happening in the transit world. We've done 3 or 4 already and hope to do many more into the future. And if anybody watching this has ideas as to guests or topics, please do send them over to us at info@detroittransit.org. We're certainly interested in having lots of good discussions on these transit topics.
Awesome. I understand TRU is celebrating its 20th anniversary. Why was TRU created?
Well, TRU was founded back in 1999 by a bunch of people who were really fed up by how lousy the public transit service was. That there are so many gaps in our public transit system. There are separate systems. There are places you just can't get to if you don't drive. And even if for the people who do use who are able to access transit, there's often long waits, inconsistent or infrequent service. Really, everyone needs to be able to get where they need to go, but our region is underfunded. We spend less than nearly any other major metropolitan area. These are like the 40 metro regions here that have more than 1 million people in them. And we're not trying to keep up with New York or Chicago, but if we don't invest in quality public transit, then people can't get where they need to go. And ultimately, that's TRU's mission. TRU believes everyone should be able to get where they need to go, regardless of whether they drive, regardless of their physical ability, financial capacity. Mobility should be universal. And so that's why TRU was created, to make that happen.
TRU does a lot of work in our community. So how does TRU do its work?
Well, I've been lucky to be TRU's executive director for more than a decade now, but I'm certainly not the only one behind TRU. We've got a great team of people behind TRU. We've got staff and interns, we've got board members and volunteers, we've got all sorts of partners, all of whom are dedicated to more and better public transit service. And so TRU does a variety of things. We do a lot of public education, helping people to better understand important transit issues, a lot of direct advocacy to our transit decision makers so that they can understand why transit's so important and how they can help improve the transit service we so badly need. We work with a lot of great partners and mobilize supporters to make a difference, and we really spotlight the important transit issues and act as a watchdog to the transit services and agencies to ensure that they're providing the best possible public transit that is possible to provide.
Okay. What are some of TRU's greatest accomplishments?
TRU's definitely done a lot over the last 20 years. One of the biggest things, but hardest to pin down, is the fact that we've really helped to shift the public dialogue. Back when TRU was founded, a lot of people had this idea of transit, who cares? Why bother? We're the Motor City. And they didn't even see why we needed better transit. So early on, TRU spent a lot of time just spotlighting why transit is so important, how our community would be improved, and forcing transit into some of the transportation discussions. We did things like delayed the I-94 and I-75 widenings so that they could then change those plans and even helped eliminate the proposal uh, to extend I-375 further down into the riverfront, which would have been just absurd, and now has been recognized that that's not the right path. Even when I got started with TRU, though, there was still an attitude of, well, it'd be nice to have better public transit, but it's never going to happen here. It's impossible. The auto companies won't let it. The suburban communities won't let it. So we've still had to fight for a long time to make more changes. We were a critical part of getting the Regional Transit Authority created by law and ensuring that there were not only the providers had input and the county execs had input, but there was citizen input into those important transportation decisions. And we've even done things like help defend the funding of the public transit services. When Smart Millage was under threat, we made the case as to why it was so important that we keep our buses rolling. And we've fought back against cuts to DDOT bus service and increases in DDOT fares as well. Those are just a sampling of some of the things that TRU has been able to accomplish over the last 20 years.
So we've been experiencing a very crazy year in the midst of a pandemic. So what's been TRU been doing during this time?
Well, we were certainly as shocked as anyone with the challenges that our region has been facing, and the country and the world has been facing. And so we really jumped straight into figuring out what is the impact of COVID on public transit, what's happening around the country, what are the best examples, and how can we ensure that people can still get where they need to go safely and reliably, even during a pandemic. So we developed a report that analyzed both examples from all around the country and what's happening here. We developed a series of recommendations, both for how individuals can stay safe, as well as how the transit agencies can make their service as safe as possible. Because as we realized, especially in those early days, we all depend on the people who depend on transit. The nurses, the janitors, the grocery clerks, the pharmacy techs. And thankfully, there's been more and more research across the globe that, in fact, transit is not a major spreader of the coronavirus. And so we've really tried to decrease the fear and let people know that as long as they're wearing masks, as long as there is reasonable social distancing, as long as there is good airflow, that riding public transit can still be a pretty safe way to get around. And that's just one of the ways that we've really pivoted to address whatever is happening in the transit world. TRU works hard to be on top of it. Let me share a little bit as to how TRU is funded, because this is a really important time of year, because TRU's work is only possible thanks to the generous contributions of individuals. We have people who give $5, $25, $50, $100. We have people who are able to give $5,000. We have some corporations and foundations who donate to support our work, but ultimately it's individuals who want to see a better public transit system, who want to have the great transit that our region needs and deserves. And so we really do ask everyone to consider joining TRU as a member to support this important work. If you are a member, thank you. Thank you so much for making all of TRU's work possible in the past and today. And if you're not, please consider joining. Anyone who gives a donation of at least $5 is considered a member of TRU, and gets our member-only newsletter, gets invited to special member-only events, and most importantly, enables the critical work TRU does day in and day out to improve our public transit service. So please, if you are able, please donate as generously as you can at DetroitTransit.org. And thank you so much for caring about public transit and supporting if you can.